Welcome back to Stephen K. De Silva's Facebook Live. I wanted to come today with my studio, and that is because I have some drawings that I want to illustrate in today's message. Now, I want you to know that I am on live. I just pre-recorded, so you'll see me commenting in the lines below Facebook Live. So we'll just take a couple moments here to let a few people jump on. I love these. This is so much fun. I look forward to them all week long, and my brain is grinding away on what are we going to talk about as I move from week to week. But last week we started a little theme on interest rate rising, and what does that mean to a prosperous soul? In that session, I broke down 4 different ways that most people borrow money. The first one is in the subject of credit cards. And we talked about that in last week's video. If you haven't seen that yet, I encourage you to go back and tap that, because I'm going to continue that theme a little bit further today. And we're going to talk about 2 of the other kinds of interest, which are mortgage interest and home equity line of credit. Now, the 4th category is auto loans, and I'm toying with the idea of a lease versus buy conversation. It's a thing that I carry around in my head, but I haven't really studied in recent years. So that will take me a little bit of study so that I can come fresh with some really good information. Well, let's go ahead and dive into the content today. I think we've got a few people on, and let's see what we can learn about rising interest rates and the mortgage on your home, also the equity line of credit on your home. Now let's go onto my fancy computer right now and look at an interesting piece of fact I just found this morning online. Here you can see that inflation is rising. Inflation is hitting the Fed's 2% target. Now, the reason for that is because U.S. interest rates are rising. So we're beginning, my goal is to begin to connect some of this reality that we hear online or in the computers or on the newspaper or on television. What is going on when the Fed raises its bank lending rate? Well, last video we talked about who the Fed is and what's going on. And last week I connected that fact to the inevitable rise in consumer prices. Consumer prices means the price you pay when you go to the supermarket, when you go to the store, when you buy clothes, when you choose your next car. So these things are inextricably linked, and they will not be separated, although we will find ways to protect ourselves from some of these rising costs. We'll talk about that, but let's move forward. You can see that this inflation rate has evidence here in this little article that the Fed, that's the national bank, has a target inflation rate. You see, their theory is that it is healthiest for an economy in the United States and elsewhere to have a low-grade infection, like a fever, where prices are always climbing. The reason is because the alternative of deflation is far more destructive than an inflation runaway. If inflation runs away, if it started to climb to 2%, 3%, 6%, 8, 10, 15, 20, do you know that some countries have inflation so high it's in the thousands of percent? Yeah, and I can't pull it out right now, but in Zimbabwe, I have a piece of their currency that is a $10 trillion note. Like our largest piece of currency is a $100 bill, or 100. Theirs is 10 trillion. And the reason is because inflation became so high that the purchasing power of each dollar, or in their case, I don't remember what theirs is called, but it shrank so tiny because of inflation, runaway inflation, that you needed wheelbarrows of currencies to buy stuff. And that is a modern reality that we need to be aware of. This is runaway inflation. The alternative is deflation. Both of those are highly destructive to an economy. And so consequently, our federal bank, our national bank, and economists, in other words, the Fed board chairman and board members, there it is, I knew I could find it, are sitting around harumphing, trying to find ways to prevent either end of that spectrum. So their conclusion is, let's target a low grade infection, a low amount of inflation. And that idea, to my understanding, originated with Alan Greenspan, who said, let's choose a rate of inflation that is low enough that no one would notice. Now, this isn't a commentary on Alan Greenspan, the Fed, or the idea of inflation or a target. What I want to do is turn this around so that we are not victims of an economic environment where we live. You see, a prosperous soul is an alternative to victim and villain mindsets. Victim is, I'm helpless and things are happening to me. Villain is a powerful victim. It's a person who says, I'm going to get back what I've lost and I'm going to get even. Those two are not opposites. They're sides of the same coin that is the orphan spirit. Now, what's the better solution is not to decide, do we want to be victims or villains, but let's learn how to alternate or navigate between the two into the third option, which is the hero. And this concept of the victim, villain, and hero is nested deeply and carefully into my Prosperous Soul content. So if you're interested in exploring that piece further, go to my website and look for either Foundations, Prosperous Soul Foundations, which has a white cover, or if you're really wanting to dive in deep, consider the Prosperous Soul Master Course, which I'm in the middle of a series right now, and the group is closed, but we expect to open our next series on Prosperous Soul Master Course in the middle of June 2018. Well, hey, sorry for that advertisement. I'm just realizing there's some resources that I'm having created and presented that I haven't spoken about in here very recently. So there you go. That's the end of the commercial. Let's jump into this mortgage idea. You see, right now, I went online and I found information, which we understand that information from the internet may not always be reliable. Okay, but I'm going to throw some statistics which you can improve on with your own research, but I'll throw some so that we get some relevant and relative information that we can teach and learn from. So this is what I found, that most mortgages are based on a 30-year amortization. That means that this mortgage will pay off to zero if all payments are made within 30 years. So if you buy a house and you make every single loan payment, this lending that you have gotten into on a mortgage will take you 30 years to bring it to zero. And you can get, of course, shorter lives than that, 20 or 15. Some are custom, but my point is that the average right now in the United States is a 30-year time span. Now, by looking across the last 20 years, we can find that the average mortgage in the United States is 5.6%. Right now, because Fed rates are so low, the national bank rates are so low, and remember, those low rates are unavailable to you and I. Those low rates are what the banks borrow at when they borrow from the national bank. So this low rate gives our bankers the ability to lower their rates. Remember, they stack on top, and the federal rate is whatever it is, and on top of that is the commercial rates that we experience when we're out shopping. We feel this entire bridge of rates because we are working, in the case of a bank, with a company. They are just making money just like everybody else. And so that layer on top is how they make their profit. The layer on the bottom from the Fed is their part of their operating costs. Okay, so this average rate today is only 4.5%. I say only because that combined rate today is lower than it has been for an average across 20 years. So that feels like this is on sale. It feels like, hey, let's go borrow now because the rate is lower. Now, I will say that that is not flawed logic. It's just the idea that I can buy this shirt or that car, or in this case, a home mortgage, lower than someone could across averages in the last 20 years. But you still are locking yourself in to a rate of some kind, let's say 4.5 or likely higher over the coming months, because that rate is increasing. Is it increasing because banks are getting greedier? No. It's increasing because the federal layer underneath is getting higher. Now, they expect that across the next 12 months, the increase will be 0.75% in 12 months. See, they only bump that underneath rate at 0.25% increments because they don't want to scare anybody. Every time they do, the stock market takes a dip and things get all rattly because everyone is adjusting that is intelligent about how the system works, and this system adjusts. So really, they kind of inch it up. It's like the frog in the pot. If you just turn it on boiling hot and drop in the frog hops out. But if you slowly increase the temperature from cold water to boiling, the frog will stay in the pot and not realize it's getting cooked. Oh, that's kind of a bad illustration, but it's probably accurate. Now, a $200,000 mortgage is going to cost you around $1,000 a year. So if you have a mortgage on your home, that rate of 4.5 or 5, whatever it's going to be in the next 12 months, is going to make around $1,000 mortgage payment, depending on lots of factors. But let's just stay back and talk generally. A mortgage on your home is going to add about $1,000 or more dollars to your operating life. Now, for those of us who have been watching these videos for a while, I did a series months ago on the idea of my Prosperous Soul LGS. Prosperous Home LGS. Prosperous Home is a manual and a content that I teach on home finances. And LGS stands for Living, Giving, Saving. Living, giving, saving are the three categories that you spend every dollar of every day for all your years through this idea of a funnel, how money moves through your life. And what we're now saying is that a rising inflation rate is putting pressure on the widest part of your funnel. It's increasing costs on the widest part of your funnel. That's your living costs. So when you buy homes and interest is going up, that interest expense belongs up in your living calculations. Living, giving, saving. For you veterans of the videos and my material, the living, giving, saving I have described like a baseball diamond. First base, second base, third base, and a home run. First base guideline is an 80-10-10. Living of 80%, giving of 10%, saving of 10%. I call the living bread the giving and saving seed. You need both bread and seed to be a good, to get a good harvest and to make a good economic engine in your life. So every time interest rates go up, if our income in the top of the funnel isn't growing, what happens is more and more resources are drawn up or sucked up into the living category, and less is available for the giving and saving. You can see how inflation steals our seed unless we can increase income in the top. Now, we can obviously ask for more income, more salary, more wages per hour. We can multiply our income streams, and these are all ideas and concepts that are well vetted in my material, but others as well. But my point is, if we don't continue to keep increasing our inflows into the funnel, inflation will rob seed, and more seed will go in our mouth as bread because it simply costs more money to live. Now, unlike some financial teachers who I respect highly, I would say that I am not an absolute against debt guy. There are some that are, and I respect that. They're not wrong. Debt is not sin, however. It's a bondage. And when you have debt, you've embonded yourself to, in this case, ever-growing amounts because of interest, plus the increasing interest rate over time because of the direction of the economy right now. You are committing more and more of your time. You are committed or pledged or in bondage to serve that lender. The Bible makes it clear it's better to be the head and not the tail, or in this context, the lender and not the borrower. So if you decide to go and do some home loan borrowing, whether it is a mortgage or a home equity line, you really need to plan across time with an intelligent strategy that looks at your LGS across time. We worked on some of these ideas. That was called an target LGS in the earlier videos. Now I keep referring to those because I want you to understand we have resources on this Facebook page where you can really learn and sharpen your ideas as a prosperous soul, regardless of the economic scenario. Whatever's going on, we don't have to be victims or villains. We can instead be heroes. Now, here's my point, kind of a closing point on the idea of debt and borrowing on your home. You see, the system is designed to put us in its jaws. The system is designed in the low-level inflation target to constantly consume more of our seed, to require us to always pursue increasing income. Otherwise, things could get stable and static. And you know how horrible stability is? Well, that's a joke. If you don't know, stability is one of my core values. And it is not a thing that it will happen to you. Without your intentional effort at building economic stability in your home and your business. So the jaws are out there, and the system of borrowing is designed to put you in those jaws because of interest rates and the climb and inflation that it creates. But you can, if you can move forward without debt, what you do is avoid the jaws. Now, some people misconceive that if I can have no debt, I am insulated from this problem. that the jaws of the economics of inflation and interest rate are avoided because I have no debt. And that is not true. It's true enough that you may not be in the jaws, but you are still on the fork, so to speak. That's because you are in an economy that has been driven up and will continue to be driven up by inflation. So you and I, as prosperous souls, need to find intensive and intentional ways of controlling our spending and moving away from the constant appetite that is consumerism. We are also fed continual information through media and through friends and conversations and personal appetites. We are constantly fed this information that we need more. There's ever more that I need in my consumption. That also is a program, and I think it's a destructive program across time. Learning how to be content in what you have, I think, is very wise and biblical. Look up the word content in your Bible, and you will find the Apostle Paul using that conversation powerfully in the context of money. He says he's learned the secret to be content in a lot or a little. What's amazing to me is Paul was probably about 60 years old when he said that. So he was admitting that it was a skill that he learned by the time he was in what turned out to be the last year or maybe 2 years of his life. Well, those details aren't necessary or important. What I think is that we can learn contentment. I think learning that is both wisdom and biblical. So, not that biblical would ever be not wisdom, but whatever. You know what I mean. It's just good and good. Okay, awesome. Now, I just had a little thought. I thought I would throw this idea out. When people talk about investing in this environment where interest rates are climbing and inflation is going up, what we will begin to hear are terms of inflation hedges or hedges against inflation. And you will be enticed to put money in all sorts of places as defense or protection against this jaws gnawing of inflation and interest rates. I think this is my point I want to make. That idea is not bad, but again, I think we are getting wrong information because we are being sold into the investment that particular person saying that information is trying to sell. It's like asking the fox to hold the eggs that you have in your investment. You know, whoever is talking is often selling something. And I'm no different. You're listening to me now, I suppose. Or at least I'm running on your computer and you're busy at some other task. But realize I am selling something. I'm selling this idea of a prosperous soul. Of course, I believe in it. And I think it is a great and wise piece of material and information. But nonetheless, realize whoever you're listening to is selling something. So when we hear information about inflation hedges or protections against inflation that are trying to get your money, understand they are selling something. So here's my little piece of advice. What is the best model to defend against inflation? Or, said another way, what is a true inflation hedge investment? And the answer is business. You see, all of these other investments, like stocks and bonds and, let's go for it, gold and silver, metals, all of these things, all of the variety of things tend to be reactive to, almost passively reactive to inflation rate, or this growing climb in both interest and inflation. But one investment as a general class stands uniquely apart, and that is business. Businesses have the unique ability to fly over, to flap above the rising costs underneath them. How? By raising their prices. You see, that's why interest rates and things, I don't want to start a bunch of fights here, but I think that some of our financial policies in the United States are too aggressively designed, or too easily triggers to rising inflation. And when inflation rises, it's rising for us individually, but also underneath companies. But you and I, as consumers, have one disadvantage. We can't just go raise our prices because we're the consumer. We have to go get better jobs or get more income streams, okay? We have to work smarter, not harder, sometimes just harder. But companies just raise their price. So if inflation goes up and interest rates go up, prices go up. And when prices go up, that protects the company like a hedge against the rising costs, against inflation. But that increasing price translates as more inflation to the consumer. So you can see, as the consumer, we are kind of on the end of the stick, the wrong end of the stick. We're kind of in a place where we are, if we're not careful, victimized by this economic cycle, whereas businesses are protected. Well, I had a couple more illustrations, but I think Hey, thanks for watching. I'm Stephen K. DeSilva, and you're probably wondering, why have I never heard this information before? Well, now you can by going up into this corner and subscribing to this channel. Or you can go to this corner and watch the next video. There is tons of information I'm giving you. Go check it out and go deeper. Or better yet, go to the link below and go check out my website. I've got some free stuff on there. Go get that and go see lots of resources so you can finally master your money. Hey, I gotta go record another video. I'll see you soon. Bye.